So I want to welcome everyone. I'm Antonia Estrada, the Head of Professional Learning here at Uprooted Academy. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, it's great to have you with us. And to those who have attended previous sessions, welcome back. These sessions are designed to be brief, under 30 minutes, because we know how busy your days are. In today's session, I'm going to share important updates about the 2025-26 FAFSA form to help you support your students and families through the application process. So let's get started. So first, a little bit about us. We are a college access nonprofit founded in 2021, and our mission is to empower first-generation, low-income students of color by guiding them through the college application process, helping them explore career opportunities, and providing the mental wellness support they need to achieve socioeconomic mobility. Now that you've heard about our mission, let me walk you through what we offer to support that mission. So we hosted our annual virtual college fair on October 19th, attracting over 1,000 registrants in nearly 60 universities, so a huge success. Then in March of next year, we'll be hosting a virtual career discovery fair. This event helps students explore various career paths and hear directly from professionals in different industries. Next, our virtual community center will be launching shortly. It'll be like a virtual Boys and Girls Club, a space where students and families can access resources, participate in activities, and find support when they need it. We also offer professional development training, just like the session you're attending today. And we also hold student and parent workshops throughout the year, covering a range of topics from college prep to mental health. And lastly, we provide in-school direct student support. This means we work directly with schools in Los Angeles to offer personalized help to students within their school. And these are just a few of the ways we're working to make sure students have the support and the resources they need to succeed. So now I'm going to talk about the main topic of this webinar, which are updates, to let you know about updates to this year's FAFSA, 25-26 FAFSA. So first, as you might know, the FAFSA, or Federal Student Aid, officially released a 25-26 FAFSA form to all students on November 21st, so 10 days before its December 1st goal. The department has also begun processing paper applications. In the beta testing period that began on October 1st, Federal Student Aid opened the 25-26 FAFSA to a limited number of students through a special process to help identify and fix bugs. And as of November 21st, through 4 rounds of testing, more than 167,000 students had successfully submitted the online 25-26 application, including more than 3,200 students from mixed status families. Counselors who participated in the FAFSA beta testing reported that the FAFSA worked well, so that's good news. The form will be similar to the 24-25 FAFSA, so similar to last year's, but with a better user experience. We'll talk about in the next few slides. There are likely to still be some issues when the form opens. Now, the form has been open a couple of weeks, and there are still some glitches, but Federal Student Aid will be monitoring and giving us updates, monitoring those issues to resolve them and improve application processing and user satisfaction. Many students whose parents don't have a Social Security number struggle to submit last year's FAFSA while waiting for the government to verify their identity. This was a big challenge from last year because of the new FAFSA that rolled out. So in April of this year, FAFSA, or Federal Student Aid, announced a new policy allowing contributors to skip manual identity verification and contribute immediately for the 24-25 cycle. Then in July, this policy was extended, so the identity verification process has been waived for the entire 25-26 FAFSA cycle. This means that students can submit their FAFSA even if their parents' identity verification is still being processed. And again, that's for parents without a Social Security number. All parents have to do is to create an account on studentaid.gov, an FSA ID. Once their account is set up, they can log in with their username and password to fill out the FAFSA while their identity is being verified in the background. Since this review process can take time, families shouldn't wait for approval to complete the FAFSA. That said, because this is a temporary fix, so it's been waived for this cycle, but we don't know about future cycles, parents without a Social Security number that are contributing to their students' FAFSA should create their FSA ID early and start the manual identity verification process as soon as possible. This will make it easier for students to renew their FAFSA in the future without any issues. Another update to the 25-26 FAFSA is that Federal Student Aid has created enhanced how-to resources, so documents and videos translated into the 11 most common languages spoken in the U.S., including a step-by-step walkthrough of the FAFSA form. So these resources are designed to make it easier for non-English speakers to navigate and complete the application. Now, not all those materials, not all the languages or those materials in all languages are available now, but they will be coming hopefully soon. And then, oh, sorry about that. Then what I'm going to go to now is just kind of show you screenshots of some of the fixes that Federal Student Aid has made, added messaging, pop-up boxes for some common issues that students had last year to reduce errors and make the process smoother for students and families. So I'm going to show you those now in the next few slides. So first, this is a question about applying for an unsubsidized direct loan. This is a very confusing question that a lot of students answered incorrectly last year. So dependent students, students will fill out questions on the FAFSA that will determine their dependency status, but dependent students, and that will be most students younger than 24, will be asked when they get to this page on the form, will be asked whether their parents refuse to provide the financial information on the FAFSA form. So to be considered for most forms of federal student aid, students must answer no to this question. So what happened last year, students were confused. They didn't read the question carefully. It's not worded very, very clearly, and they answered yes. And then they weren't able, of course, to fix to go back and fix that until their FAFSA submission summary was available months later. So now you can see that if a student does select yes, that there will, or mistakenly answer yes, there will be this pop-up, which lets them know that they will become ineligible for financial aid. It warns them about missing out on another potential federal student aid, so that they understand that if they do, they won't be eligible for most federal student aid. Now, if the parents are not supporting the student and refuse to provide their information or their consent and approval, then the student can answer yes to this question, and they will be asked to confirm that they understand the impact on their eligibility before continuing. But most students will not be the case that their parents will refuse to provide the information, so they would want to answer no. So again, this has been was a source of confusion last year, and now the question is worded the same, but students will get this pop-up to make sure that they understand that if they select yes, they won't be eligible for most federal student aid. The only aid that they would be eligible for is an unsubsidized student loan. Now, another change that is for the new FAFSA, this 25-26 FAFSA, has to do, again, where there was a lot of confusion last year, and it had to do with pulling federal tax information from the IRS. So every contributor on the FAFSA must provide consent and approval for their federal tax information to be transferred directly from the IRS into the FAFSA to help complete the financial section. Every contributor must click on approve. If you click on decline, then you'll get a pop-up saying that the student won't be eligible for federal student aid. So everyone must approve the consent, must consent and approve to have their information transferred. However, when users clicked on approve, they weren't sure if the process had worked or not. They didn't get a message saying it had been successful. So now what federal student aid has added on the form is this new message to let students and contributors know that their information is being transferred from the IRS into the FAFSA, and that that it has been successful or not. So this simple change received a lot of positive feedback during those 4 rounds of beta testing. Now, it could also be the case that for some contributors, their federal tax information couldn't be retrieved from the IRS. So in that case, those contributors will get this message saying that their data was not able to be transferred, and so they'll have to manually enter it. This will be the case for all contributors without a Social Security number. They will need to manually enter their financial information. Contributors without a Social Security number can create an FSA ID, but for now, they will need to manually enter their financial information. At a later date, the U.S. Department of Education will work to retrieve that federal tax information to be transferred directly into the FAFSA, but there is no timeline for a fix of this issue. So for the time being, contributors without a social security number and other contributors, for example, those who might have filed a foreign tax return, will have to manually enter their data, but they will be told if they need to do so. Now, the third major improvement that I wanted to mention with these screenshots is the new digital attestation process for individuals without a social security number when creating an FSA ID. So again, individuals without a social security number who need to contribute to the FAFSA can create an FSA ID to fill out the FAFSA online. But there were a lot of issues last year with this, it used to be but it's been somewhat improved. What used to be a complicated process, so printing out this form, signing it, mailing it in by snail mail. Now it can be done entirely online, making things much easier. So now instead of this form that you see here on the right, which was last year's form, users can simply check a box to confirm and verify their identity when they're creating their FSA ID. Then users, TransUnion, one of the three major credit bureaus, generates identity verification questions. But that didn't work last year very well. So if those identity verification questions can't be generated for these users, they will see this yellow banner on the account creation confirmation page, again, when they're creating their FSA ID. This banner will provide clear instructions on the steps they need to take to verify their identity. They'll receive a verify your identity email that includes an identity verification case, and to complete the process, identity verification case number, along with instructions for the next steps to verify their identity. So to complete the process, users must forward their identity documents to the email indicated here, and so to complete the process and try to get their identity verified. So those were the changes, some of the major improvements to the FAFSA form and FSA ID creation process. Now, another major improvement doesn't have to do with the FAFSA form, but it does have to do with help and completing the form is the contact center. So that Federal Student Aid Information Center that you might know of, students who called and were not able to get through or got hung up on. So the Department of Education has significantly increased staffing at the Federal Student Aid Information Center by adding over 700 agents since January. So you can see here in January of this year, they had 900 agents, and that's been increased to 1,600, which is an increase of nearly 80%. In addition, another 225 agents are set to join in the coming weeks to handle increased demand now that the FAFSA application is live. The department has also added extended FAFSA-only weeknight and Saturday contact hours for additional help. However, with the high demand following the FAFSA release, wait times may still be longer than usual during peak periods. So that's something to take note of. But on the plus side, Federal Student Aid is implementing hold time announcements to tell callers of current wait times, giving them the option to hold or call back during less busy hours. There's also improved access via the call center to translation services if students need them. Users can press option 7 from the main menu to reach an interpreter for any of the 11 most commonly spoken languages in the U.S. And as I mentioned before, Federal Student Aid is also coming out with written resources for the 11 most commonly spoken languages in the U.S., some of which are available now. This is just a slide with the expanded hours that you can see, and expanded hours for FAFSA-only support, which will be in effect through March 2nd. Students and families can reach agents at the contact center in English or in Spanish, and as I mentioned before, can also request an interpreter for other languages. Now, even though there have been a lot of improvements to the FAFSA, to this year's FAFSA, there are still some issues that Federal Student Aid has not had time to fix. So just some ongoing issues, and all these issues are highlighted on the FAFSA issue alerts page on Federal Student Aid. There's a page specifically for ongoing issues and workarounds if there are any. So an ongoing issue still is inviting a contributor when that contributor does not have a Social Security number such as a case with mixed status families. So this typically happens when there's a mismatch between the personal information entered on the invitation that the student enters to invite the parent and the information associated with the contributor's studentaid.gov account. So when federal student aid goes to match a contributor with a student, they're looking for certain pieces of information to be identical. And by identical, I mean identical. So the contributor's last name, street address, and date of birth need to match exactly. Even the smallest difference, such as a single letter or period, can cause issues and prevent the contributor from being added. As you can see, here's an example. If the student writes that their parent's mailing address has road, spells it out ROAAD, but the parent has written it as RD as an abbreviation, then that's going to lead to issues. So everything has to match exactly. While there are plans underway to introduce fuzzy matching as a temporary fix later this month, for now, the information must match perfectly. So it's strongly recommended that students print a copy or take a screenshot of the information their contributor enters on the personal information page when they create their studentaid.gov account. Then there are other challenges, finding colleges with long names or multiple programs, inviting parents with no social security number that have a foreign address. Married contributors who file jointly with their current spouse are being required to invite a non-required contributor to the form. This shouldn't be the case. If you have a student, for example, whose parents are married and file taxes jointly, only one of those parents needs to be a contributor on the form. But because of glitches, sometimes both parents are being asked to contribute. But anyway, these are ongoing issues. And again, you can look at the latest updates on the FAFSA issue alerts page on Federal Student Aid website. So again, just to recap, while the form has been much improved, there are still some glitches. Okay, so just some tips about the FAFSA, tips. Parents can start the form and invite the student to complete their section. This often works when the invitation to the parent contributor is not matching. Ideally, the student would start first, but if there's an invitation with, an issue with the invitation, then the parent can start the form. Paper FAFSAs are available. They are available now with this new release, but they're not recommended if the online version can be accomplished because the online version is faster. Students' online FAFSAs will be processed within a matter of days. So obviously it's faster. And of course, online, if federal tax information can be transferred, then that's fewer questions on the financial sections that students and families have to input. And finally, prior to any portion of the form being submitted, the FAFSA can be deleted and started again. So if there are any technical glitches, you can delete the form and try again later. And you simply do that on the upper right-hand corner, the menu, there's an option to delete the FAFSA and start again. Of course, before it's submitted. And now, all these new fixes and functionalities for this year's FAFSA, the 25-26, will also affect last year's FAFSA, the 24-25, right? So all those bugs that are being fixed in this year's cycle will also apply to the 24-25 FAFSA form as well. The 24-20, even though the 25-26 FAFSA form has been released, the 24-25 FAFSA form is still online. That deadline is not actually till June 30th, 2025. So hopefully, so both forms should be being fixed at the same time. Now, those are the major updates to the FAFSA, which I wanted to cover. Now, let me just talk about some resources for counselors and students. So, and all of these I will send you in a follow-up email after this webinar. So first is this infographic that students can use to determine if they're a dependent or independent student. If they're an independent student and they're not married, they don't need any parent to contribute on the form. They're the only contributor. If they're a dependent student, then at least one parent will need to be a contributor on the form. And then students also have this tool to determine this Who's My Parent tool that just came out this year as a standalone resource to help them determine which parent, if they're a dependent student, needs to be invited on the form, if one or both. So these are the same questions. They're going to see these questions on the online FAFSA form, but this is a standalone resource that's been created outside of the FAFSA. for students to determine which parent will need to contribute before actually starting the FAFSA. In case they need to have conversation with a parent, let them know that they'll need to contribute before actually starting the form. Then last, what to do next? What should students do next, or what should you do next to help your students? One is to encourage your students and their contributors to open studentaid.gov accounts. So it can take 3 days to get approved for your FSA ID. So they'll want to get it done at least a few days before they tackle the FAFSA. One of the big challenges last year was when a student completed their FAFSA and invited their parent to contribute, but the parent couldn't because their account hadn't been verified through the Social Security Administration. Now, if the parent sets up their account ahead of time, they can immediately complete their part when the student invites them. So it's strongly recommended that all contributors each create a studentaid.gov account before starting the form. Research shows that when students and parents can sit down and finish the FAFSA together in one session, it's much more likely to get done. And then they can use these infographics that I showed you in previous slides to figure out if they're dependent or dependent, and if they're dependent, which parent will need to contribute on their FAFSA form. This great resource that has come out this year is that Federal Student Aid has provided. It's a 43-page form, a 43-page PDF that provides counselors and advisors with information and resources to help guide students and their families through the FAFSA form. It doesn't document the whole FAFSA form. It just focuses on the sections that students and families tend to find most challenging. I've read it. It's quite useful. So again, I'll be sending a link to this PDF in a follow-up email. Additional council resources. So the 25-26 FAFSA roadmap on the Federal Student Aid website, which highlights key dates. Now the form has already been launched, but there are additional resources such as those resources in the 11 most common spoken languages in the US that will be coming out. A preview presentation, which is a very, very long slide deck with screenshots of each page on the form if you want to look at that slide deck. Or as an alternative, you have the prototype, which is sort of like a demo where you can kind of go through the FAFSA, like a dummy FAFSA, so that you can see what the actual user experience would be like. For students, we have the who's the parent on the FAFSA form, that wizard that I showed you before. A new resource on creating their studentaid.gov account, tips for completing the FAFSA form, and also a YouTube channel that has actually very useful videos on everything from creating FSA ID to who's a contributor on the form, short, helpful videos for students to look at. Now, before I end, as I wrap up, I did want to mention this guidance that NCAN has issued, FAFSA guidance for mixed status families. NCAN, as you can see here, is a National College Attainment Network. It is a nonprofit membership and advocacy association whose members help low-income and first-generation students apply to college and find a way to pay for it. So last month, it issued guidance, which I will read here. Although the Higher Education Act prohibits the use of data for any purpose other than determining and awarding federal financial assistance, we cannot assure you at this time the data submitted to U.S. Department of Education as part of the FAFSA process will be protected. Additionally, we cannot assure you that individuals who are undocumented might not be identified and targeted for punitive action in the future. Because of the potential stakes of this process, we want every individual to have as much information as possible before submitting identifying information to the federal government. Every mixed status family, especially those who are setting up FSA IDs and contributing to a FAFSA for the first time, should make a considered decision about whether to submit a FAFSA. For some, the potential risk could now outweigh even the considerable benefits of federal student aid. So NCAN made the statement and shared these concerns because of the stated immigration policies of the incoming administration. Right? It has nothing to do with the new FAFSA, the better FAFSA that was rolled out last year. There is no precedent, no history of the federal government using undocumented parents' FAFSA information against them. But because of the publicly stated immigration policies of the incoming administration, NCAN felt the need to issue this guidance. I'll be sharing a link to this information in a follow-up email, so that you can look at that. And then as counselors, you know your students best, and you can use this information to approach those conversations with students who might have, or who might be from mixed status families. Another piece of information I wanted to share with you is the President's Alliance on Higher Education and Immigration developed a guide to support counselors in their conversations with students and families around data protections for FAFSA information. Also very useful, and I'll be sharing that with you as well in a follow-up email. So that is it. That is the end of the webinar. I'm sorry to end on sort of like a down note with the NCAN guidance, but it's important for us to share that information with you. And when we have further updates or any additional guidance on their part, Uprooted Academy is a member of NCAN. We will share that with you. In the meantime, please stay engaged with us. Read our blogs for tips and tricks. We have a lot of information on not only on FAFSA, but other topics around college applications. Come to our free events, such as the one you're attending now, and follow us on social media. Talking about upcoming events, we have a webinar next Thursday, December 12th, so in a week, about pursuing purpose. And the webinar will empower students to discover the personal values and identify colleges that not only align with those values, but also prioritize their success. And we have a great speaker, Frederick Evans, from Elon University. So if you can attend yourselves, please encourage your students to sign up. And finally, that's it. I'll be sending a survey, a link to a survey. Your feedback is important to us to help us improve future workshops. So please take a few moments to fill out the survey and let us know what you thought. So that is it for me. And I want to thank you very much for attending. I hope that information was useful, and want to wish you a happy holiday season and relaxing winter break. So thank you very much for having joined today.